Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the webinar here today. I'm Dr. Dawn. I'm a naturopathic doctor and acupuncturist in Huntington, Long Island, as well as New York City. Happy to be able to connect on social media with you all today with the really important topic about healing chronic illness and my own personal story with reversing lupus. I had an autoimmune condition for decades, and I was able to reverse it naturally, and I'm happy to share my story with you. So if you have any questions, please let me know. If you're unable, if I don't get to your question, because there is a lot to cover right now, feel free to email me. My information will be listed at but if you're tuning in right now, you can always email me at drdawn@innersourcehealth.com. So I can be reached at Dr. Dawn, 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 at innersourcehealth.com. All right, great. So welcome. And I hope that you find this information very interesting. Might be some things that you've never heard before, but I do hope that it helps. Okay, so hang on one second here. Okay, there's all these little things to know with these webinars. All right, so to give you history, I am a naturopathic doctor. I practice here in New York, but I am board certified and licensed in Connecticut. I also have my master's of acupuncture that I got as a dual degree also at the University of Bridgeport, and I hold my license in New York State for acupuncture. I'm also a Reiki practitioner. History as a personal trainer and being a health coach is how I started on this whole journey. And it was interesting, actually, with my autoimmune condition. This all came to a head when I was in med school. So I'm happy to share this story. So what I'll be talking about today is how natural medicine does in fact heal. So I'll be combining both Western and Eastern. At the end of this, I have some tips with acupuncture, so hopefully I'll be able to get to it. How natural medicine does treat the root cause of disease. You can have both relief as well as long-term, and that's the key, is reversing these illnesses. You have the long-term relief and you get your life back and you feel better. And there is true healing in all of this. So I'm going to go back and share my story. So I was told that I had Raynaud's, if anyone's familiar with that. I had cold hands and the lighting's there better. Okay. I had, my symptoms were, when I was a teenager, cold hands and cold feet. The hands were so cold. And based on the labs, what was going on when I was younger is that there was a lab called ANA, and that was positive, but none of the antibodies for an autoimmune disease were coming up. So there was nothing that anyone could do. I was always told that I had circulation issues. That's what doctors would tell me. And I never had found any relief. There was nothing that anyone could tell me. There was nothing that conventional medicine was able to do to make me feel better. So it wasn't until I was in naturopathic medical school when I understood the physiology of the body. I was learning about chronic inflammation. I was learning about autoimmune conditions. And all of my symptoms were getting worse. Of course, I was getting older. And it took 3 doctors over the course of a year to tell me, I think you have lupus, and for me to take action. So, with diagnosis, it can be pretty traumatizing for some people. You don't want to admit that you have a chronic illness. Lupus has a bad stigma. I was a little bit in denial of it, and I kept thinking, okay, no, I can just be healthy and I'll make myself feel better. But with being healthy, you have to make the right choices for yourself, and this is different for each person. That's why naturopathic medicine is so wonderful, because it focuses on individualized medicine and finding the root cause of disease and what the imbalance is in the body for each individual person. So that's the key, and that's why naturopathic medicine is so wonderful, and that's why I love what I do. So So I had the symptoms. I told you about the cold hands and feet. It was tingling, very painful. When this was all getting worse, so I always say the body has 3 ways of communicating to you. It whispers to you, and if you're smart enough to listen to that, you'll take action with some mild symptoms. Then the symptoms become a little bit more frequent. They affect your life a little bit more, and that's when the body's talking to you. That's really when you need to start taking action and paying attention to yourself. And then there's when the body's screaming at you, and then you're in a lot of pain. Oftentimes people have to go on pharmaceutical medication, or, maybe hospitalized, or it leads to even more a chronic illness. But that's the thing with autoimmune conditions, is that it opens the floodgates. Once you have one autoimmune condition, you can get hit with a lot of them. That chronic inflammation does a real number on the body, and it's like the smoldering fire in your body, and you really have to understand that if you have an autoimmune condition, and reverse this chronic inflammation. I can't stress it enough, because you will feel better. When you have chronic inflammation, all the body can do is fight that inflammation, and it is a daily battle that it is doing. No one needs to be having these internal battles within themselves, but that's what autoimmune conditions do when you have that chronic inflammation burning inside of you. So I was doing everything healthy, but I was in med school, which is an extremely stressful time. Every day I am taking exams, studying for something. It's always crunch time. And everyone experiences it in their own way. I was working out a lot, but I started getting them pain in my joints. Now I never injured myself. So it was a strange pain, and it was on both sides. We call that bilateral. And it was in my elbow. I'm touching them right now because I remember how it was. It was so weird, and I would press on it. It would kind of hurt, but my workouts were affected. I love weight training, and I started, like, one arm I couldn't lift up. I remember I was using like 3-pound weights, and it was still really painful, and I would look like weird doing it because I didn't have the strength anymore in my muscles. And I would also get swollen hands in the morning. I'll never forget. It was my right hand. It's in my right hand. And then it started in my left hand. I was like, what the heck is this? Very, very strange. And I couldn't move the hands. They were so swollen. And then it would go away, after, once I woke up, in that first hour of waking up, it would slowly go away. And then I also had night sweats. The night sweats were getting more and more, I was sweating more, where I would have to change my clothes in the middle of the night, just waking up in a pool of sweat. And when you have night sweats, that's a sign of imbalance in the body, of infection, and inflammation is another one. So if you have night sweats, don't ignore that. It's really important to understand why you're having night sweats and reverse it. And if it's due to chronic inflammation, I am here to help tell you that there's hope to reverse this inflammation so that you can feel better. Okay, so what else was going on? Oh, and then so one of the main things I was doing at the time, I was making my own tomato sauce. So I'm going to talk about nightshades in this. And I thought I was doing something really healthy for myself. I was getting organic tomatoes, heirloom tomatoes, organic, non-GMO. I was making it myself, no sugar added, only all these spices in it. I would make a big jar every Sunday for food prep at school, because I didn't have a lot of time to prepare food, but I love tomato sauce, so I would put it on like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and it was always just there for me, and I was throwing it on there. In hindsight, I realized that was only fueling the fire of the chronic inflammation in my body. So it all came to a head. I remembered I was preceptoring with a naturopathic doctor, Dr. Lisa Siglain in Stratford. If you're listening, thank you. And she was one of the first doctors to say, I was talking about all the weird things, because this is what happens, is that all the doctors and anyone who has autoimmune condition, I know that you can relate to this, would always go to the doctor and they say, oh, you're so healthy, you're so young, you seem fine. And then I'd start talking about all these little weird things that were going on. And they'd always kind of go, right? Is that not how the doctors look at you? Suddenly they go, strange. Nobody could help me. But that's what I would always get. And everyone would just shrug it off, like, okay, you've got some poor circulation. I had one doctor tell me, get a boyfriend printer. That was not helpful advice, because that wasn't going to make the inflammation go away. That wasn't going to keep me warm. And I certainly don't want to have to rely on somebody else to help me, when I'm fully capable of feeling better on my own. So I think I touched on everything. There were so many little things going on. Oh, and the fatigue by 3 p.m. every day down and out. I couldn't meet my friends for dinner. I couldn't do anything. I would just be so extremely tired. I had to wake up every morning super early because that's when I would have good energy, and do all my studying then, and do anything that I needed to study early in the morning, because I had to just relax. By 3 o'clock, I was not of any use. I couldn't do any. My brain wasn't working. I wasn't able to study. I wasn't able to absorb information. I couldn't really function in clinic. I would try and have my clinic shifts earlier if I could. So it was really quite the struggle for me. So then I had another doctor. I remember in one of the classes, because we were talking about that lacy pattern on the skin. And I said, oh, I have that. And he goes, yeah, I think you have an autoimmune condition. And I talked about some other things I had. He's like, yeah, I think you have lupus. Again, in denial. I didn't take action. I just said, no, I'll just keep, being healthy, thinking that I had it under control. Then finally, I had a third doctor who told me what the first doctor had said, and said, take this test. I think you have lupus. Just because your antibodies aren't showing up, this test will show if you have lupus. So this test is called the AVISE test, AVISE, by Exogen. And this was the test that changed my life, because it showed me on the lab that on a scale of -5, meaning that you don't have any signs of lupus, -4, -3, -2, -1, 0. And then once you cross the threshold of 0, it gives you 1 to 5 of how serious your lupus condition is. So this is what was going on, was that my ANA titer, so my titers were going up on the labs, but my antibody wasn't showing up. So therefore, in conventional medicine, they couldn't do anything for me because there was no diagnosis. Does this make sense to everybody? But what this AVISE test showed me, I was at -1. So I was feeling awful. The antibody wasn't showing up, but I was on the cusp of the antibody showing up. It showed that I was in fact reacting. I had lupus that was smoldering in my body, and I had to take action, because that was probably just a matter of months, and then the antibody would have shown up, and I just kept feeling worse and worse. At that point, my titers were up in the 300s, if anyone's familiar with it, so it was pretty high, and this varies across the board. So sometimes people will have the antibody but have lower titers. I've seen that. Sometimes people will have high titers and the antibody doesn't show up. Regardless of which antibody it is, when you have an autoimmune condition, your body has chronic inflammation smoldering inside of it, and you must reverse the chronic inflammation in order to feel better. And once you reverse the chronic inflammation, you will be able to, these labs will eventually reverse themselves, and you will feel better. Okay, so I want to make that very clear how important that is. Okay, so that is my story. And I did feel better. So what did I do? So all the things that I'm going to share with you is going to paint the picture for how I felt better. And I use nutrition, lifestyle, and supplements to do so. So I'm really excited to share my journey with you. Luckily for myself, when I started taking action after I got the results of that test, I had results with, I symptomatically, I got my energy back, my joints started hurting, stopped hurting, swelling went down, and all the symptoms just melt away. That's what happens. And mine, it was about a month. So somewhere within a month to 6 weeks, and suddenly I just forgot about all the symptoms and I felt better. But inflammation is tricky, all disease is tricky, but if you have a practitioner that understands how it works, what the root cause of it is, you will find relief, you will feel better. And the more that you are able to take the advice that your practitioners give you and have compliance, able to follow what their health plan is for you, the healthier that you will feel. Okay, so inflammation. So again, there's a reason why we have inflammation in the body, and this is what I want to explain, is that it is our normal biological response. It's a defense mechanism in our bodies, and our immune system goes into effect to recognize this. So if there's damaged cells, if there's pathogens or irritants, okay, then there's acute and chronic inflammation. So acute is caused by any harmful bacteria or any kind of tissue injury, right? You cut yourself, you have an injury. Any infections or wounds, they need this inflammatory process to heal. That's the natural response of the body. The innate immune system, so it's a non-specific response. It's just the way that we respond when we get cut. Okay, starts rapidly and it's only lasting for a few days, possibly up to a few weeks, right? Depending on what the injury is, or clearing that bacteria. Chronically, this is where the pathogens cannot be broken down. This is where viral infections, such as things like Epstein-Barr virus, if virus infections kind of in the body, we build an immunity to it. But sometimes these viruses, they stay latent in the body, right, where they're sleeping. But if they get, let's say, stress, oftentimes stress can ignite these viruses to come back and cause some issues with you. So that's sometimes how viruses can work and rear their ugly little heads. Any kind of foreign body that's affecting the body for a long time, or having an overactive immune response. So this is what happens with an autoimmune condition. Your immune system is in overdrive, and it can affect the internal organs. So, and it can be really slow. This onset is really slow. With me, it was slow. It was for decades. I had the signs. I had the warning signs of it. My body was whispering to me with the cold hands and feet and the tingling, hey, with some inflammation here. But I was not given the tools. I didn't know. I didn't have this knowledge. So I wasn't able to reverse the chronic inflammation. Luckily, I was able to reverse the chronic inflammation and feel much better. I got my life back. We reversed this chronic inflammation. You're reversing the chronic disease and you're feeling better. And again, with chronic, it can last for months to years, which is what happened with me. The body's reaction. So again, with acute, it's a healing process. It may turn into an abscess. You might have some pus, right? That's all the healing process. But if it's not resolved, it could lead to a chronic state. Chronic state means that there's tissue death. There's necrosis. There's thickening and scarring of this connective tissue. Thickening and scarring then causes stagnation, and this can lead to pain, and it wreaks havoc on the body. So you really want to avoid any kind of chronic inflammation. Inflammation does not mean infection, but again, infection can cause inflammation if it's not dealt with, okay? There's external. So this is a little bit self-explanatory. External can be acute or chronic. You can get a cut, a scrape, or bruise. Anything chronic like eczema or psoriasis that you're experiencing on and off periodically throughout your life, that's a chronic external inflammation. Skin's our largest organ, and our skin can give us information. And when you have any kind of rashes, any kind of eczema or psoriasis, it's telling you it's a sign of heat. It's red, it's itchy, it's irritating. That's heat, and that's your body expressing heat and telling you that there's heat, there's inflammation going on in the body. Internal, it's typically chronic, but it can also be acute, right? Something like appendicitis, you have a surgery, some kind of reaction to a drug. Internal chronic inflammation, this is what we're talking about, autoimmune condition. Even mental illness too, right? This can even settle in and affect our cognition, the way that we're thinking, the way that we're feeling, brain fog, all those things also. It can settle in there. Everyone's different, right? So that's what I shared with you is my experience, but everyone has a different experience. So these are the signs of some external inflammation, which is also similar to internal inflammation, as you'll see. So pain, redness, immobility, right? You can't move because it hurts, swelling, and heat, okay? So I know that makes a lot of sense. And then the internal inflammation is very similar. So that fatigue, whenever I have patients that have fatigue, it's a huge stop sign. There's an imbalance in the body and we have to change this. Nobody should be having fatigue ongoing all the time. If you have a bad night's sleep, sure, you feel tired. You have children that keep you up, sure, and that might last a few years. But if there's no reason you're able to have a good night's sleep, there's nothing interrupting your sleep, but yet you're not able to have a good sleep, find out if it's chronic inflammation affecting you. And this fatigue is something to really pay attention to. Noting what time of day it is, noting when you might feel better. All these things I ask so many questions about fatigue if a patient has it. And it's really important to explore all of those. Fever, so afternoon or evening time fever, this has to do with inflammation. So later in the afternoon, if you suddenly just start getting hot or fever after eating certain foods, that's a huge sign that there's chronic inflammation in the body. You're reacting to foods. It could be the particular foods that you were eating. Hello, I was eating tomato pasta, the regular, a few times a day. I was always getting this afternoon heat, feeling warm, and night sweats, major sign that there is an imbalance in the body. Joint pain, rash. So if you have any, like I was talking about with eczema, psoriasis, or any kind of rash, that's a sign of heat. Could be reflecting internally of it, but it's coming out on your largest organ, the skin. Abdominal or chest pain, that could be inflammation. Also could be chest pain. You want to make sure that you rule out any issues with your heart. So go to a cardiologist and maybe get a full workup also. Mouth sores. So when you think of the full GI tract, our GI tract starts in our mouth. So if there's any inflammation in our gut, we might be expressing that in our mouth, and we'll be having these sores, and they'll be very painful. So trying to figure out why you have mouth sores, you can't just put something in your mouth to make it feel better and keep gargling and swishing, because the root cause of that could be internal inflammation in the gut. And our GI tract, it starts in the mouth and it goes all the way to the anus. So you're talking about the whole, it could be anywhere in the GI tract. Any edema, that's a swelling. That's a swelling that I was talking about when I was waking up in the morning. So what's interesting with the swelling with me is that, and this is what's really important to understand. So even though I've reversed all of my lab markers, there's no sign of inflammation in my body, there's no sign of lupus on my labs, I know that I am predisposed to an autoimmune condition. So if I start to dibble and dabble with some nightshades, if I do this, and what happens with me, if I have it 2 days in a row, let's say I go out and get tacos and there's some tomato in my guacamole, and then the next day I have a veggie burger and there's some peppers in it, just about 100% of the time I will wake up that third day and I will have a swollen right hand. Ever so slightly. It's not like this swelling that I used to get when I was in the acute flare. So that is my warning sign to myself is, whoa, you've been a little risky here eating these nightshade vegetables that I'm going to talk about. And that was my sign that I need to pay attention to that. And that still goes on now. So even though all my labs are negative, I know the warning signs when my body is now whispering to me. So when you go through this and you come out the other side healing yourself, you have a new perspective and you have a new understanding of your body, and you're able to understand how your body reacts to this chronic inflammation. So pay attention, because your body's trying to tell you things. Chronic inflammation, 3 causes of this. So the inability of the body to eliminate the cause of the acute inflammation, right? If the acute inflammation stays, it becomes chronic. That's a problem. The body's attacking normal healthy tissue. So the body thinks the tissue is a pathogen causing disease. This is a major issue. When it comes to autoimmune disease, I like to work with mind-body work as well. So if your body is attacking itself, are you having inflammatory thoughts yourself? What is your self-talk? What do you tell yourself? Are you putting yourself down? Are you being really tough on yourself? You know, you can really go down the path with autoimmune disease. It shows a lot of women are predisposed to this more than men. Why is that? Well, you know, we're putting a lot of makeup on ourselves, our hair, dyeing our hair, we're exposing ourselves to toxins, as well as when you're changing how you look to look a certain way, are you telling yourself that you're not good enough and that you need to be better and do things to make yourself more acceptable to other people? So, you know, you can really go down this rabbit hole to understand autoimmune disease, and it's pretty deep. You know, mind, body, soul connection. It's true. Another cause of this chronic inflammation, exposure to an irritant over a long period of time. So this is everything, GMOs, our food. There's so many problems with the food. Non-organic, GMOs, pesticides, insecticides. Really think about getting organic landscaper. Not if you have any pets, maybe if you do, just have them treat the front lawn, but don't have them treat the backyard where your pets are going. This inflammation affects our pets also. Something to really think about. Chemicals and cosmetics and the hair dye, everything that we're using, cleaners that we're using in our house, toothpaste, amalgam fillings, major source of toxicity with the silver there. So I'm really trying to avoid those. But the good news here is that the chronic inflammation is reversible. Okay, you can reverse your lab markers, you can get your health back, but it is something to know for your lifetime that you have an autoimmune condition. You can even say that you've reversed your autoimmune condition. You've had an autoimmune condition, because you can show on labs that it's not showing up anymore. You can say that your autoimmune condition is in remission, whatever it is. But I'm here to tell you that this inflammation is reversible, and you can completely have your life back and be symptom-free. Very important. And how can you be affected? So this is everything, right? Being a human in America. I mean, that's just like the bottom line. There's so many inflammatory things in our world. It's so sad. There's so many toxins in the air. Driving the car, there's toxins. Exposures at home and work, the GMO in the foods, the pesticides in the food and on the lawns. Even in the water, there's toxicity. Even the EMFs are inflammatory for us. Some people are more sensitive than others, but EMFs are a major problem. 5G in communities, it's a problem that's not getting better, unfortunately. So you have to really protect yourself. And what can you do? So find a doctor who listens to your concerns. I wish that I even knew that naturopathic medicine existed when I was a teenager and I was going through these issues, because I was suffering needlessly. But, you know, everyone finds out things in their own divine time. I found out and I was able to help myself, which is why I'm able to help others and help you. So find a doctor who understands autoimmune conditions, understands chronic inflammation, understands how to read labs and assess them properly. So ask your doctor to run the appropriate lab markers, run tons of inflammatory markers. Inflammation is not clear cut. Inflammation settles in people in all different ways. You have to run different markers to figure out what's going on. Test the ANA and look at the titers. If the ANA is positive, and the titers are getting increasingly more, higher and higher. Again, mine were in the 300s when I was feeling really bad. But some titers can even be 1 to 80. That's one of the lower titers when it's positive. And you're feeling pretty bad even then. So everyone's response to chronic inflammation is different. Again, everyone's pain threshold is different. So that's, you know, it's just settles in people in different ways. Get those antibodies tested with specific autoimmune markers. And again, the lab that saved my life and gave me the answers to the fact that I did have lupus in my body was the test by Avise by Exogen. And you can go to a rheumatologist if you want to call them in advance, ask them if they run that specific test. Any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I can refer you to, if you're in the Huntington and Long Island area, a rheumatologist that I work with who does run it. Getting tested for heavy metals. Heavy metals are a source of toxicity in the body, which can also be a root cause of inflammation. Get a full stool test, okay? There's different tests, there's specialty tests. Conventional labs can run it also, and get an extensive stool test to understand if there's any pathogens in your body that is settling in your GI tract and it's sitting there in your stool, and you want to clear that and get rid of that. And now I'm going to talk about proper diet, lifestyle changes, supplements, and hopefully we'll be able to get to acupuncture. So conventional treatment, it's important to talk about this because this is just symptomatic care. So NSAIDs, they alleviate pain and the inflammation. I understand why people take them, but they are not the answer. They are not going to make you feel better long-term. And there's major side effects in taking them. Risk of stomach ulcers, worsening asthma, causing even more inflammation down the line, kidney damage, increasing risk of stroke or heart attack. Nobody wants those side effects. Those aren't going to help you. Acetaminophen, this alleviates the pain, but it's not tackling the inflammation. Okay, so you might feel better in the short run, but it's not reversing the chronic inflammation, the chronic disease. Corticosteroids, steroid hormones. So this is what they do. They prevent, MOA is called mechanism of action of inflammation. So what they're doing is suppressing the inflammation with a huge stop sign, but that's not reversing the inflammation. That's very different. It's suppressing it, and it's actually burrowing it deeper and deeper into your body. That is not the answer. And being on prednisone, these steroids, it affects the tissue, it damages tissue, it damages cartilage long-term. This is not the answer. Nobody is going to feel good on steroids long-term. You do not want to suppress. You want to calm down the inflammation naturally, not suppressing and doing that through pharmaceutical medication. That is not the answer long-term. So naturally, and there are tons of ways. I have a naturopathic medicine doctors. We have a huge toolbox of all the different ways that we can do this for you. So it is a conversation with you about what works for you. And this is how naturopathic medicine works. We treat the root cause. We understand the root cause of the disease, and that leads to ultimate wellness. And we do this using nutrition, lifestyle changes, and supplements. So when it comes to nutrition, the anti-inflammatory diet is the key to reversing this inflammation. If you're an acute flare, I highly suggest that you take what I'm saying to heart and you avoid all of these nightshades. Once the inflammation is under control, and if you want to start dibbing into some of these nightshades because you just can't live with, let's say, tomatoes, do that once you're feeling better, and then see how the body reacts. That's my advice to you. So if you're in a chronic flare, if you have any chronic inflammation, if you have an autoimmune condition, the anti-inflammatory diet is what you need. So you want to avoid the nightshades, and this includes peppers. All the peppers, especially chili. Black pepper spice is okay. You want to avoid tomatoes, even the organic ones, even the heirloom tomatoes, all tomatoes, eggplant, and white potato. But sweet potato is okay. Okay, so this slide here, super important if someone wants to take a picture. This is, there's more to the anti-inflammatory protocol, but this is a good place to start, especially in an acute flare and trying to reverse the inflammation. This is how I did it. For me, again, I was suffering for decades. Luckily, I had results within 4 to 6 weeks by doing everything I'm sharing with you. So what are nightshades? It's from this botanical family called Solanaceae. The Solanaceae family, they produce this thing, it's what the property in it is called solanine, and it's in the stems and the leaves. And this alkaloid is this naturally occurring organic compound in it. There's trace amounts of nicotine and capsaicin, right? So in cayenne pepper, in cayenne pepper, everyone knows that, that you've heard about that being an anti-inflammatory, it relieves pain, but this is not what you want if you have an autoimmune condition. You want to avoid cayenne pepper because it is a nightshade with autoimmune disease. And in these foods, they have trace amounts of capsaicin in it. The point of them is that they poison the nerves of any insect that eat the plants. So that's how these plants survive, because the Solanaceae, if an insect comes and attacks them, that's how they naturally are preserving themselves in the environment. Cool, huh? The problem with the alkaloids with autoimmune disease is that the gut health can be compromised, and it can irritate that gut lining, therefore causing inflammation in the gut. What did I have while I was also suffering with my autoimmune condition? I also developed IBS, pretty bad. My emotions were connected with my gut, and oof, it was bad. I was having over 10 bowel movements a day, and luckily I caught it pretty quickly and reversed that, but that was no fun. So again, like I said, once you have one autoimmune condition, it opens the floodgates for multiple autoimmune conditions to settle into your body. These alkaloids boost the immune system response. So it causes an overactive immune system, which was what happens with autoimmune disease. And some animals cannot detox these alkaloids, which is what's happening with people with autoimmune conditions. Humans are animals, and we can't detox these. Other culprits, so grains, dairy, extremely inflammatory, eggs, legumes, refined sugar, oils, except for avocado, coconut, and oil, and alcohol. So when I was going through what I was going through, I couldn't even have a sip of wine. I would be feeling really, really exhausted. And then there's more bad guys, the lectins, okay? So if we want to go down the rabbit hole of all the things to avoid, something to think about are lectins. Some people might be more sensitive than others. The problem is these proteins in the legumes, so I have them listed here. So it's all the vegetables that are in a seed or a pod, like chickpeas, red kidney beans, black-eyed peas, peanuts, lentils. It binds to the carbohydrates in the bloodstream, and it ends up being an irritant to the gut. Sometimes I find certain blood types have more sensitivities to lectins than others, and it could really vary based on the individual. Some people can handle them. I seem to do fine. I eat hummus a lot. I'm okay with it. Lentils, I'm fine with. I have split peas. I eat my beans all the time. So this wasn't really an issue for me. Importance of vitamin D. Oh, vitamin D is more than a vitamin. It's a hormone, and it is linked with our immune system. Low vitamin D has been linked. There's plenty of studies to show this with autoimmune conditions. So definitely get your proper dose of vitamin D, something that you should definitely get tested for regularly and be dosing properly for it. The benefits of vitamin D, it promotes something called regulatory T cells. With this protects you against autoimmunity. So get your proper dose of vitamin D and get your levels where they should be, between 60 to 80. If you have any questions about that, ask your doctor what you should be taking. Vitamin D helps you to differentiate between invader cells and self cells. So what's going on in an autoimmune condition? You're attacking yourself, and vitamin D regulates the immune system. Tons of things that you can eat. So there's a dairy-free golden milk, which is full of turmeric. I've had that, posted on my social media if you're interested in that website. Beets, making veggie stews, gluten-free and dairy-free lasagna. Okay, so ways of making foods without dairy, without tomato. Life goes on, and there's tons of vegetables and delicious food in this world, and you're gonna feel good avoiding those nightshades. Dark leafy greens and vegetables. So the more colorful these foods are, the more antioxidants and flavonoids in it. Your cells are being fed, you're gonna feel good. You want those bright colored foods, and use tons of spices. So turmeric, that's in the golden milk, ginger is anti-inflammatory, rosemary, clove, sage, cinnamon, all these things are really great for you. So tons of food prep also to lower your risk. Cook your vegetables. Sometimes it's these raw foods, the skins in the foods can react with autoimmune conditions. Soak beans and grains. Seeds could be a risk, in those skins of vegetables. Sometimes people react to nuts. They can have maybe nut butters, but having the actual nuts, breaking those down as legumes like peanuts, sometimes can cause reactions. If you have an autoimmune condition, you have the chronic inflammation, that could be a source of it. So really fine tune your foods with your practitioner or your doctor. Treat the gut. So soups and broths and purees are really healing, and some nice healing teas, warm liquids help detox the body, opens up your arteries and veins, and gets all the toxins flowing through your lymphatic system. Really important. And there's so many more naturopathic protocols that can help you too. Exercise is really important. So, but you have to be careful. If you have the joint pain with autoimmune conditions, if you have the fatigue, you have to do exercises that's for you. So, having been a personal trainer, working out is so important. It moves in Chinese medicine, it moves the qi, it gets you feeling better, it gets the blood moving, it's invigorating. And staying active will release those stress hormones, because stress is a major sign of setting off inflammation in the body. So if you're not managing your stress, and that's where we need to start, then that's where you should start, because you're going to feel better when you're properly releasing stress hormones. Essential oils can help. So diffusing them, using them in the shower, doing chest rubs or the sole of your foot can really help. IR sauna, so sweating out toxins, releasing any heat. IR saunas are actually anti-inflammatory. They're antibacterial, antiviral, antifungal. Infrared saunas are amazing. Getting your sunshine, because that's your dose of vitamin D, and being out in nature is very nurturing. And then you get those negative ions, which are actually really healing for you. Meditation, and then detoxing negative thoughts. So if anyone is curious and learning more about that, I do talks in the salt cave. I'm doing now midweek meditations to help people through that. Okay, so supplements. Now this is different for every person. So again, contact your practitioner who knows your health. And I urge, if someone's going to email me with specific questions about supplements that they can take, I cannot give information on that. If you are not my patient and I've not established care with you, that's what naturopathic medicine is all about. And that's what prescribing proper supplements is all about, is understanding the full medical history, understanding the patient, from their prenatal nutrition up to what they had for breakfast on the first day that I meet with you. All of that information allows your naturopathic doctor to tell you what supplements are good for you, and have that full health plan. So again, this is just information for you to have, think about, and bring to your own doctor and ask them if maybe this can help you. Supplements. So again, based on any deficiencies that I can observe in my appointment with you, I always like to tell patients if they cannot paint their fingernails, because there's so much information that I can tell from the nails. I look at tongues. There's all different things that we as naturopathic doctors have been trained in to see if there's any deficiencies, but also assessing lab work, knowing if you're deficient in anything really helps. Getting your omega-3s tested and taking any omega-3 fatty acids, which there's great healthy one, flax seeds, have them, any nut butters, any good omega-3s for you. Vitamin D is, you can get some from the sunshine. Living here on the East Coast where I am, a lot of people are deficient. Really getting a good quality supplement for vitamin D at the right dose is very important. And there's tons of anti-inflammatory herbs, so find out what is good for you. When it comes to herbs, they're not like they're not just anti-inflammatory. There's so many medicinal properties of each that can have so many different benefits. So based on your particular presentation, I'm sure your naturopathic doctor can find a really good combination that's just for you. And I want to make a big point about this to caution with immune boosters. If you are in a flare, if you have autoimmune disease, that means that your immune system is in overdrive. An immune booster can really actually make you feel worse at this time. So you want to do something called immunomodulation. Again, I am not going to give specific recommendations here, but find a practitioner who understands this, because this is going to be specific for you. And that's the way that you want to protect yourself during this time that we're all experiencing right now. Acupuncture. So I'm not going to actually have time to go through this. So I think we're going to have another day where I'm going to talk about this. But acupuncture is extremely effective and interesting. The root cause is different. The way that Eastern medicine looks at it, I do a tongue and pulse diagnosis. Western and Eastern science are very similar. So it looks like maybe I will get through this a little bit. So when there's injury, you have a blockage of qi and blood in the system, which can cause stagnation. Acupuncture helps. Herbs can help. So with irritable bowel disease, this is one way of approaching it, with heat and dampness and using points to drain that. Asthma, a lot of people are worried about lung functioning now. Acupuncture can help clearing heat from the lungs. And any swelling. So the lung and the spleen and the kidney meridians, these organs are all associated with it, and Chinese medicine can help with draining dampness. And then arthritis. In Chinese medicine, they understand they have a translation for this called B syndrome. And this can be very effective with moving the blood and qi, clearing heat, draining damp, and warming the meridians. And there's an herb called MOXIBUSTION that we use. It's an anti-inflammatory, and it's really healing with autoimmune conditions. So I thank you for joining me here today. Feel free to follow me on Instagram at drdawnnd, or Facebook. You can follow me on my professional page at Dr. Dawn ND. And you can also email me, drdawn@innersourcehealth.com, drdawn@innersourcehealth.com, and feel free to check out our website, innersourcehealth.com. And we're going to be having webinars. Each of us here at Inner Source Health, the doctors, we're doing weekly webinars to promote health and healing and spread the word about naturopathic medicine and any information to help you through this time. And I hope that this helped. Any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I look forward to seeing you on more webinars. So thanks so much. Be well, everybody.